All right, so good day, class. This is again your instructor, Elizabeth Joy Serrano Quijano. I am recording this lecture video, which will cover our midterm topics or lessons for midterm. So, this session or lecture will also include the activities that I will give to you, and you will need to comply. Okay, so this is good for our midterm lessons. Okay, so I hope that you will be able to comply. But before that, I hope that you are all fine, you are well today. Okay, so let's get it started. I will be sharing my screen. Okay. Okay. Okay, so once again, this is communication research for third year Bachelor of Science in Development Communication students. Before we will proceed to conduct a research, before you will conduct a research, every researcher should know what are the qualities of a good researcher. So, this list does not include all the qualities of a good researcher, but some, only some of the qualities. So, first, a good researcher is not biased or dogmatic. Dogmatic means that you are very convinced with your own belief, that you will impose it to others, no? That you will impose it to others. So, for example, you are conducting research about religion, and you are non-Catholic, and then of course we all have our biases. Okay, so but you should set aside your biases in order to come up with a logical and objective result of your study. Even though we all have our biases, for example, you have biases for the poor, you have biases for the IP, the indigenous people, you have biases for the LGBT community. But when you conduct a research, set aside your biases, okay, so that your understanding on the process and even the result of your research will be logical and objective. Okay, next is a good observer. So that is understandable. You need to observe, followed by good being a good listener. So you do not put too much of your opinion or your biases. So you need to listen to your respondents or to your participants. You need to listen more so that you will come up with an objective result or results. Then communicates well. So researchers need to engage in open-ended communication. So when you ask, you listen more. No, so less words from the researcher, but more from the respondents or the participants. Then you have to be insightful. You have to reflect on the results, on what is the participant is saying to you, or what is the message of the result, what is the message of the processes that you've been through. So you have to need that insight. You have to understand the process, the all the that you are everything that you do related to your research. You need to have an insights. That's why some of the researchers really have a journal. What are they doing every day, then they record it. For example, in a qualitative research, note taking is very important, reflection, meditation. You need to have that kind of attitude, being insightful, so that you will learn from others, and that will add credibility, or that will add ano ba to? You will that will add something to your research, that will support the result out from your insights, from your reflections and meditations, then you also need to be well informed. Okay, for example, that you go to a community and then you don't even have any idea what is the community all about, their culture, you don't know their culture. So you really need to have a research prior to your research. You need to know your respondents, you need to know your participants, what kind of people are they, their background. So at least you will be informed the do's and don'ts. For example, you will be going to a community and then most of the people in that community is non-pork eater, and then you brought a free lunch for your respondents or for your participants, and then the viand is pork. So you need to be well informed, no, about your participants and about the processes. For example, again, when you conduct an IP research or research about the indigenous people, you need to have an FPIC or free and prior informed consent from the NCIP. So you need to ask for permission from their tribal leaders. You need to ask permission from the NCIP. So you need that information, okay, so that you will be well informed. You will not be ano ba yan, ignorant about your participants and the research process. Next, you are able to make people comfortable. So of course we have to be humble. You need to make people comfortable by not being being different from them. You need to mingle. You need to make people at ease with you, especially your participants, the people you will be interviewing. So you need to make them comfortable with your presence. You know, you're not intimidating. You are not feeling elite or feeling highly intellectual that they will be intimidated by your presence. Then, of course, especially this is very important in qualitative research. You have writing organization, even in quantitative. You have a writing or organization, so your writing must be organized. There is coherence, there is logical thought, there is rationality. The even the words that you choose, the vocabulary must all be there, and analytic skills, then deep understanding of the topic. So that's why in our previous discussion, I have mentioned that the topic that you choose or you will choose has have to be has to be relevant to you, or at least you can relate with your topic, because if you don't understand what is your topic, it will be hard or difficult for you to conduct it. So that is why I gave you the freedom to choose your own topic, so that you will be comfortable with your own topic and you already understand what do you want. You have already in mind what do you want to conduct, what kind of study, what is the topic of your study, so that you already have an idea. Okay, because it's very difficult if the teacher will impose or ano bang magbuot kung unsa ang imong topic. So it will be very difficult because dili ka relate, you don't know, you don't have any idea, you don't have deep understanding about the topic because it was just given to you. So you need to understand your topic, deep understanding of your topic. Then willing to triangulate. So in your last year, we've already discussed triangulation, no, in news. So triangulation in research, especially in qualitative, you have to for example, triangulation, you really have to make sure that the result is supported by another means of gathering a data. For example, you conduct interview, then you conduct also focus group discussion, then you also conduct immersion or note taking or observation. So meaning you have at least three ways or methods to gather your data. Okay? So these data need to support um, each other, or need this data gathering process needs to support each other. So the interview and the focus group discussion, for example, should have the same result from your data gathering process or data collection process. So you are willing to do all the processes to triangulate just to make sure that your results are valid, credible, and it is believable, it has credence. Okay. So, as I have mentioned, these are only few or some of the qualities of a good researcher. So you can actually research or contemplate for what are the other qualities of a good researcher. So the list is unlimited. So now I want you to write in your journal a 300-word reflection about the qualities of a good researcher guided by the following questions. Okay, so what do you think are the other qualities of a good researcher that are not included in the list? And how does a good researcher overcome the possible challenges in conducting a research? And if you are going to be a researcher, what are the possible challenges that you might encounter? Okay, so you will be writing this in your journal. Okay, where's that? You will be writing this in your journal and you will be submitting it by next week. Okay, so this is just this activity should be written in your journal to be submitted to your class beadle. I hope that is clear. So just a 300-word reflection about the qualities of a good researcher. Now let's proceed to our next topic, the general principles of research. First is autonomy, okay, also called as self-determination. Calls for the researcher to always respect the rights, values, and decisions of other people. So that is why consent, pagtugot, is very important when we conduct a research. Your respondents or your participants need to be informed of all the process and the dynamics of your research so that they can have the right reasons for them to agree or disagree, continue or discontinue in being part of your research. So they have the right to withdraw anytime. So if at first your respondents agreed to participate in your research, and then later on they will realize that they are busy or they have to do something, and then they cannot go on with the process of your research, then they have the right, they have the freedom to withdraw from your research. So always respect the rights and values and decisions of other people. Not only the respondents, but also those people who will be scrutinizing your papers. For example, you are asking a permit from the LGU, and then the LGU did not provide or will not provide you the necessary permit to conduct a study because there's still a pandemic or whatever protocol that they need to follow. So you have to respect that decision. Okay, so added in this definition, this means that people as research subjects, it refers to the participants, have the ultimate right to decide who knows what about them. So the participants or the respondents have the ultimate right to say yes or no. So, dili ta mamugos if they don't want. Kailangan jud nimo, for example, 10 participants were for your focus group discussion, and then you only have 8. So, respect the other. So, you really need to look for another 2 if naay mga nag-withdraw or mo decline sa imuhang um, invitation to participate in your research. So that is autonomy. It means that always respect the rights, values, and decisions of other people. It is understandable. Second, non-maleficence is based on the belief that it is wrong to intentionally inflict harm on another. So, before conducting your research, you really don't plan to do bad uh, on other people. Researchers must always be aware of any potential threats or disturbance that their research can cause to individuals or communities, especially when the topic is very sensitive. For example, it's about domestic violence or abuse, and then you are going to interview these victims of domestic violence. So they have to recall all their painful experiences. So that is very difficult for them. So you really need to plan it very carefully how to conduct it without traumatizing them, without making them recall all those traumatic events. So you need to collaborate with a psychologist, and then you need to collaborate with the DSWD, social workers, in conducting such sensitive research. Okay, so it is wrong to intentionally inflict harm on another. So later on, I will require you to watch or research about the um, Tuskegee incident, so that where the ethics and research was questioned. The next is beneficence. This means that researchers should always have the welfare of the research participants as a primary consideration in research. So beneficence. Um, it's so understandable that the participants should also benefit from your research, not only for the career of the researcher, for your own compliance to your grades or to that subject, but the participants should be the ultimate ano ba yan? Beneficiary of your research. So research, 'di ba, should improve, should help other people, should lean towards progress and development. So dili para sa imuha, but for the sake of the community that you are conducting your research, for the sake of the people na imuhang gina research or the participants that included in your research. So beneficence also means you have to um provide for their needs, 'di ba? During the conduct of your research, you need to make them comfortable, even provide for their meals or for their um, meals, snacks. So that is one way to show gratitude to your participants. And they should also know the result of your study. So it does not end when your study, you already have your result. So na-interview na nimo sila, and then ibalik na ka sa imuhang sa school or sa imuhang balay, and then anay result. Wala sila kabalo sa result. So they should also know what is the result of your study, and they should also be asked if ni-agree ba sila sa result of your study. So you should really put um, more consideration on the part of the participant rather than yourself. So mas i-consider dapat jud nimo ang imong mga respondents than yourself. Then justice, the ethical principle of justice is respect for the participant. No researcher should take advantage of any person or group just to achieve the objectives of the study. So this is very common. This is very um, this is really happening today na They are just exploiting. Sad to say, some of the researchers are just exploiting their participants to come up with a research. No, so that is very sad, and but that is the truth. Na may mga researcher na ginagamit lang nila ang mga participants. And then wala gani kabalo ang mga participants kung unsa jud ang purpose, kung unsa ang result. And then the researcher, iyan ang gi-present international conference, yan ang gipa-publish. But the participants wala day gani kabalo what is that all about, wala na explain, wala sila kabalo sa result. So you take advantage. So daghan, especially when it comes to the studying or conducting research in IP communities. So daghan kay mga na-exploit. And not only the IP communities but other vulnerable groups, no, na sa marginalized groups, the poor, the women, the children. So they are most of the time subjects of research, but wala man yun sila naka-benefit. Though there has already been a lot of research conducted about the marginalized sectors, mga napag-iwanan sa lipunan. But the problem is, wala man gihapon natabangan sa research. Because most of the time, ang researcher, ang inaisip lang, ang ihalang career advancement, ang ihalang awards, ang ihalang publications, ay lang ginaisip niyang sarili. But not really the good of the participants. Wala siya nag-isip sa kaayuhan sa iyahang mga participants. Okay, so you have to remember that communication and mass media researchers should consider the conceptualization and conduct of research. Okay, so before conducting a research, you really need to plan everything, every detail, every step of your research. So you need to conceptualize. You really need to brainstorm. You really need to reflect and meditate. No, you really need to really plan it out because kung wala siya nakaplano, palpak. So every step, okay. So for example, in conceptualizing and in thinking about your topic, so that must be well planned. So I want to conduct this research because this is close to my heart, or I want to help this community. So my research would be about the water supply, clean water supply in our community. Okay, so that's good. So what will be the processes? What are the possible processes that I need to go through, that I need to take up, that I need to consider in conducting this research. So I need to collaborate, to cooperate, to communicate with the barangay leaders, barangay officials, the local government unit. I need to also consider other government agencies, okay, such as, sa pa ba? For example, water supply, then ang inyong most of your water supply is gikan sa spring, gikan sa natural resources. So it might include DENR, diba? Or um, water district, if you have a water district in your place. And also your municipality, the LGU. So these are the possible offices that can give you data that will provide you information about your research. Aside from the community, no, the households or the respondents, so you need to consider who will be the people or the authority or the agencies that will be of help in your research. Second is to understand and prepare to implement existing ethical guides in the design, collection, analysis, and interpretation of data. So you really need to work with your panel members. That's why we have panel members for them to guide us. So we cannot do it alone. So we need the help of others. You have to work with your research advisor and your panel members. So they will be the ones to help you, to who will say what will be the next step. So they are very important people in your research life. So especially in the ethical guides in our school, we have this research ethics committee. So we have also we need to familiarize with the ethic guidelines of our school, of our institution, so that you will be guided. You will know what are the necessary steps that you need to take. And also, for example, if you are going to have a quantitative research, you need to work well with your statistician or with your analyst if it's a qualitative research. So remember, you cannot do it alone. You really need to seek help from the expert. Seek the help of the experts and your advisors and the panel members. Advisor and the panel members. Okay, so quantitative versus qualitative research. Okay, it is already here in a PowerPoint. Quantitative research deals with numbers and statistics, while qualitative research deals with words and meanings. As I have mentioned in the last meeting, it does not mean that you don't like numbers. You will be choosing qualitative research because qualitative research is also very difficult for beginners, and also it also needs a lot of analysis, and you have to be really a writer to conduct a qualitative research. So ayaw mo pag-ingon na quali ako kay walay numbers kay dili ko ganahan og math. Some researchers would choose quantitative research because in statistics, they find it very easy because if you gather the data, you put it or encode it in your Excel, and then i-run lang na siya sa system, sa for example SPSS or ginagamit sa mga statistician, and then you have the result. But in qualitative, you have to find an analyst, expert analyst na mag-interpret sa mga answers sa imong interviewees. So both really are difficult research types. Okay? So walay easy, walay easier or kanang ngun ka nga kanila kay dali. They are both actually both challenging, especially for beginners. So quantitative methods allow you to systematically measure variables. Okay? So in quantitative, we have variables. So I have told you no with that. We have independent variable and the dependent variable, no, for basic, research or correlation and test of hypothesis. Then qualitative methods allow you to explore concepts and experiences. So just like the other time, no, our last time when we discussed the phenomenology, so it deals with the experiences or narratives or stories of people. So when you do that, so you will be analyzing the words from their answers from the interviews. So you need to analyze also that. Then based on the people's experiences. So walay numbers, but you have to analyze the words. We have to analyze their experiences, their responses. So both, as I have said, both quantitative and qualitative researches are difficult and challenging. Okay, so quantitative research includes, so these are the types of quantitative research: descriptive, correlational, causal, comparative, quasi-experimental, and experimental research. Next, qualitative research includes phenomenological, ethnographic, grounded theory, historical, and case study. So I want you to research the definitions of these types of researches. Okay, so I did not include the definition, so it's for you to research. the definitions of these types of studies. Okay, so it's something to do. So we will be having an online quiz this Friday. Okay, so yung kanina yung sa journal, pwede na yung next week. But this week, we will be having uh, online quiz through Google Form, and which will be posted in our FB group. So this Friday, we will have a long quiz about what we have discussed. So the qualities of a good researcher, the general principles, and the quantitative and qualitative researches. Okay, so that those will be the topic to be included this Friday for our exam, our quiz. Sorry, exam. Okay, so let's proceed. So this topic will not be included in the quiz. So let's just proceed. Validity and reliability of research. Validity and reliability are twin concepts that researchers work hard to achieve. So they are partners, inseparable in research. In this section, we need to discuss these two concepts and the ways through which we can achieve these two in both quantitative and qualitative research studies. So validity refers to the extent measure accurate which a measure accurately describes a construct. Constructs have to be isomorphic. They are the closest to reality. In simple terms, validity means that we are measuring what we say we are measuring. For example, the listening skills or the reading skills of students and their academic performance. So, kung mas taas ba ang iyahang listening skills or yung communication skills, taas po ba yung academic performance? So that is measurable. So when we measure, that is part of quantitative research because we are using numbers or we'll be dealing with numbers. So validity means dapat uh, your variables or the things that you will be conducting or including in your research should measure what you say you are, what you want to measure. Okay? So, academic performance, study habits, or ano pa ba, organizational communication skills, financial literacy, so mga ganyan, pwede yang i-measure kasi meron tayong ginagamit na tools or instruments such as survey questionnaire. So meron yang mga scale na 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So unsa ka kataas ang imuhang for example, imuhang financial literacy. So i-check man na nimo dito, di ba? I assume that you've been nakasulay na mo nga maging respondent or if wala ka, mo na siyang kasagaran nga naka-appeal sa imuhang survey questionnaire. So, nag-spend ba ka every week? How much do you spend? Doon edit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In a range of 1 to 5. Once a week lang ba? Or twice a week ang imong gina-spend na money? Or something like that, no? So, it can be measured. You need to measure the variables or the constructs that you want to investigate. Next, validity is tested in four levels. Phase validity, which refers to the most obvious and commonsensical way of measuring or representing variables in a study. Content validity, so refers to the comprehensiveness of a measure in covering all aspects and range of meanings of a concept. Then, we have criterion validity and construct validity. So the meaning is there. Don't worry, I will be posting a screenshot or a picture of this PowerPoint in our FB group so that you will have something to study. Okay. Validity in qualitative research. It is tested in four levels. First is credibility. Of course, your study must be credible. Trustworthiness and richness and thickness of insights. Because, di ba, ingon gani ko qualitative is more about writing, more about insights, more about reflections of the experiences based on the experiences of your participants. So, it must be really credible. Kasi the difference mangod sa quantitative is that ang quantitative, 'di ba, nay numbers, tapos nagamit ka og software, tapos diretso na nanay data. But it is more challenging for a researcher to prove the credibility of your study when you conduct a qualitative research. For example, you really need to prove na you conducted the interview. And then, you really need to prove na ang imong analyst or ang imo pong gigamit na software is trustworthy. Naman po software for the qualitative research or pwede po siya manually i-analyze sa analyst. So, you also need to write that in your data collection procedure or data gathering process kung giunsa nimo pag-come up ana nga results. So, you really need to be credible. You need to document everything, no, sa imong pag-ato sa community, giunsa jud nimo siya. So you really need to narrate that in your research. You really need to prove that, and you really need to document everything to prove the credibility. And even the permits, you have to have a copy of your permits, no? Mga letters na imong gisulat to the authority, letters to the different government agencies na imong gitap or imong gi-coordinate. So you really have to also keep those letters in the appendices of your study. So supporting documents. Then transferability refers to the applicability of the findings of the research in other contexts. So transferability, it means na if you conducted it in Malita, pwede po siya ma conduct in other places or pwede siya research, your research is dili lang kani siya na context, but it can also be done by other researchers. Okay, and pwede siyang i-conduct in with a larger respondents. For example, you included only 100, and then na po yung next researcher na gusto who wants to conduct your research, reconduct your research using a larger number of with a larger number of respondents. So it must be transferable. That it is also necessary that your research must provide enough information that can aid the readers in applying the findings to other contexts. Okay, so reliability. Okay, reliability refers to consistency and dependability. Dependability in terms of measurement and findings. However, reliability for quantitative researchers differs from how qualitative researchers examine it. Of course, from the word itself, your research must be reliable, consistent, and dependable. Three methods in reliability. First, test retest method, split half method, cross test method. So the meaning or the definition is already there. Then, research instrument. So, your research instrument, for example, your questionnaire, in quantitative, you will be using survey questionnaire. And the quantitative and in your qualitative, you have to have interview guide or yung guide na questions. Your research questions. For example, what are the experiences? So that is your research question. What are the insights or what are the coping mechanisms? So, mana siya mga questions sa qualitative research. But in quantitative research, pwede daghan kayo na questions, no? Depende sa imuhang mga indicators o sa imong variables. So, the key considerations in developing research instrument includes the research objectives. Pinaka-importante gina siya. That's why it's in the first pages of your research, the objectives. Kung saan gusto nimo nga i-research o sa imong mga gustong makabot sa imong research. The respondents, of course, very important. Who will be the respondents? How many? Kung kag 100 nga, nung 100, unsa po imong gigamit na sampling, no? Na pagkuha sa sample size or sa numbers nga respondents. So, you really need also to explain that in your research. Articulation of the questions, length of the instrument. Of course, we have to consider the length of the instruments. Kay you have to consider their time of your respondents, no? Ikaw nagkinahanglan nila, dili sila ang nagkinahanglan sa imuha. So, for example, ang imuhang research questionnaire or mga survey questionnaire is 10 pages. So, do you think basahon pa na nila? Do you think that they will really answer that with honesty, or dali-dalian na lang nila, i-1 na lang nila tanan, i-4 na lang nila, or i-3 na lang nila tanan ang scale, pag-answer sa scale? So you have also to consider the length of the instrument and even your questions sa imong interview, sa imong mga follow-up questions. So basin po ang imong interview whole day po nimo siya na-exhaust na siya, gikapoy na siya tinubag sa imong mga question. So you really need to have your questions or your survey questionnaire checked by your panel member again and by your advisor or the research committee. Okay, so steps in developing instrument. Determine the information to be sought. Katulang mga information, mga important information na imuhang ginapangita. Decide what types of research instrument is most appropriate given the study's problem and objectives. Decide the items what that would be used. Develop question wording, layout and order the questions. Pretest the instrument. Of course, pretest is very important also, including the protocols of data collection. So, for example, you will be doing research about teachers and their organizational commitment, for example. So, before you conduct that in your actual respondents, for example, no, kailangan mag-pretest ka. So, imo sa siyang sulayan sa 30, at least 30 sa wala pa din siya, di pa siya na siya mao ang final ha. Pero imo sa siyang sulayan sa 30 sa ka teachers. For example, ang imuhang respondents public school teachers. So ang imuha sa siyang i-pretest ang katusang mga nasa private na mga teachers. So imo sa sulayan ang validity sa imong instrument ba. For example, correlational na ba ni relationship ang kani nga variables. So at least you will now have an idea no sa imuhang possible results sa imuhang study. So mag-conduct sa ka og pretest sa imuhang instrument to test its validity. Then edit the research instrument and finalize procedures for use. And by the way, kanang imong instrument or imong questionnaire, survey questionnaire and quantitative, dili man po na siya nimo makonduct diretso if wala pay approval sa imong panel. If wala approval sa imong committee members or sa imong advisor. So you really need have to collaborate with them to have it checked, your questionnaire or your guide questions before nimo i-conduct. So this is just an overview of unsa mahitabo sa inyong pag-conduct of research. Okay, so it's very tedious. It really needs a lot of hard work. It really needs dedication and patience, of course. And tanan maayo nga buhat o tanan maayo nga attitude kailangan nakay in pasyensya, nakay humility pagpaubos no. It's natural. It's common na makasab-an, makahilak ka, gusto na ka mag-give up when doing your or conducting your thesis or your study, but it's part of it, of the learning process of in conducting a research, especially if you are doing your undergrad thesis. Naadyo na siya. Kig-away ka, ma-stress ka, but do not ever give up, no. Ibig mo nga na daay. So I'm just giving you the overview, murag, 'di ba sa overview pa lang murag hago na kaayo. But you can do it. I know that you can do it. Designing research and communication in media, one has to be analytical and explanatory. Of course, you do not use words lang para para ingon na bright or to impress. You use words to explain and to be understood. Okay? Simple words can be used by researchers para mahimong dali sabton, understandable and explanatory nga to ang research. Isusugod pa lang, you really need to have deep understanding about your study. Okay, kung saan man na nimo pag-explain sa uban ug ikaw mismo wala ka kasabot sa imong study. Okay, so writing the sections of the methodology. Okay, so research design. So the research design refers to the study's paradigm, goals, and temporal dimension. The methods explains which quantitative or qualitative approaches are being used with their corresponding data gathering techniques. So the methods unsa imong gamiton. For example, it's a qualitative, then the method is interview, phenomenology, unsa imong mga methods. Then, units of analysis, then sampling. Sampling includes, uh, for example, only 100 students or 200 students. So, muna sila imong sample, population sample from a defined population. Because of course, you cannot do research naman na universal. Like tanan, estudyante jud, it's so impossible that tanan, grade 7 students in the world, imuhang mahimong respondents or will be part of your research kay, di ba, hago, gasto, and impossible. So that's why we have sampling. And we also have computation. Nganong kana lang, for example, na ay 1,000 ka grade 7 sa inyuhang probinsya. And then, by computing a sample size, you will come up with na pwede ra di ay dili kailangan na 1,000 ang imuhang himong respondents with the use of a computation sa population sample, pwede ra 200 or 300, no? Depende sa ato ang computation. So, dili siya necessary nga tanan, but you have to define or select lang population sample using a computation pod. Then variables and measures, concepts and indicators. These are based on study framework. So variables again, independent variable, dependent variable, napay-mediating variable. There are kinds of variables. Then data gathering activities and procedures. So mao na to kung ingon ganina that everything that you do, um, like asking permission, giunsa nimo. So you have to document it. You have to write it down in your research. You have to explain that. Then data analysis, the procedures, processing, analyzing, and interpreting the data. So data, especially in quantitative, no, even in qualitative, na po analyzing and interpreting the data. Okay, so for the activity in this lecture or in this lesson, I need you to submit your chapter 1. So meaning your raw draft of your chapter 1, which includes the problem and its background for chapter 1, then the purpose of the study, significance of the study, ano siya of the study, scope and limitation of the study, and the definition of terms. Then the deadline of that chapter 1 is on November 5, 2021, 5 p.m. Okay? Congratulations. Okay, so the deadline of that, okay, asan naman? The deadline of that is November 5. So you will be having a lot of time. 1 month from now. From today, 1 month from today. So, ayaw mo pag-relax, relax. This will be your final requirement for midterm. Okay, so I will give exception for those limpyo na ilahang chapter 1 And I will also need to polish pala your titles no katong needs improvement o gatong mga na resubmit. So I will be checking that again. If I will not forget. Okay, so you need to submit your chapter 1 on or before November 5, which includes these portions of chapter 1, the problem in its background to definition of terms. So exempted sa midterm exam ang limpyo na og chapter 1. Okay? So that will be your reward. So, yan. Okay. Okay na di. Okay, so you will be exempted from a midterm if I will like your or I will approve pala, I will approve your chapter 1. Okay, so that would be all. Don't worry, I'll be posting the screenshot of the PowerPoint in our FB group so that you have something to review and you have something to check no for the specialist mga activities. Okay, thank you for listening. I hope that you have a good day and that dili kay ta ma-stress and you have learned something for today. Thank you and God bless. Maayong adlaw kanatong tanan.